subject as the subject of collective life, but it deals with the subject of collective life on a different plane. We have studied the evolution of collective life as growth from small unit of the family to the clan, the tribe, and then the community or commune, then the nation, and just now coming before us is the prospect of unity of mankind. Now, there more and more the dealing was with regard to constitutional growth, the constitution, the city states, the republic states, the monarchical system, and so on. So that it was more in dealing with the growth of the size of the collectivity, one, and the institutions and the constitutions which went along, developing along the development of the collective life of man, giving rise to greater and greater units. In this book now, Human Cycle, you find the development traced on psychological lines. It does not speak of constitutions, it does not speak of the states. This does not speak of the growth from the family to how it has begun to grow gradually and come to the nation unit, which is now a stable unit of collective life attained by man on earth. And he is looking up to unity of mankind as the next largest, unit of collective life possible for man to realize on earth. Here he speaks of the psychological factors that have been also operating not in the individual life but in the collective life. So that this is really speaking a study in social psychology or psychological factors of social life. You see? In fact, the title of this book originally was, you see, I think, what was it? Social. There's a Psychology of Social Development. That was the old title. Psychology of Social Development. Just as there is individual psychology working in the individual, either be he being guided by his desires or by subconscious or by his intellect, by his reasoning, by his emotion, and so on. But here is psychology of social development. The whole society as a group life has been undergoing domination of psychological principles, and he is trying to trace the growth of this psychological development of societies and also to prognosticate, to show which way the psychological movement of collective life should move. As in in the ideal of human unity, we saw that it must end into either a world state or a loose federation of free nations. Is it not? There were the two possibilities which showed. And he showed that a free federation of nations would be the best in the interest of promoting unity of mankind on the largest scale. Now, that is the one constitutional development which you can see in the new element which is going to come, the humanity as a whole. Here he is trying to show what psychological factors will have to work in the collective life of man. Because till now the idea has been whatever the individual psychology may be, the collective psychology generally remains far behind the advanced individual of the same group. And collectivity is generally not in a line with the highest representative of its own self. The man who is highest in a society or the most cultured or the best developed man, while the masses of the common man generally remain lags far behind. But the group as a whole has a psychological factor governing it. And now we are being, here given a sort of a study of how to look at this problem of social psychology and what factors seem to have worked already in the past, what factors are working in the present, and what therefore would be very likely the line along which society should move in order to create a new unit based upon a new psychological element, if there was a new psychological element at all going to come into being. And that is where we are now. We are trying to trace this. He calls it, therefore, this age in which we live, he calls it the age of individualism and reason, for instance. He doesn't call it the ideal of human unity, call it differently. Now, individualism and reason. These are the two psychological factors now operating in mankind. Age of individualism and reason. We are passing through that phase of development of, psychology of society. And it has begun in Europe, and by its contact, it has also been operating in almost everywhere in the world. Its origin is in Europe, and by contact, all the world now is under the domination of individualism and reason. These are the two psychological, forces that are working. The impulse to discover truth and govern life by the truth that is discovered by the mind, this tendency is very strong in Europe, and it is that when it is expanded which has given rise to individualism in man. That man has been wanting to discover the truth for himself and govern life by it. Whatever truth he discovers, he wants to put it in life. He doesn't want to accept conventional or ready-made truth that is given to him. That is a characteristic of individualism. The age of individualism is the age in which the individual does not accept the conventions or the traditions that come to him. Even traditions he wants to subject to his reason and see if he agrees with them, then he might act up to it or operate them according to them in life. And that is why Europe is strong and expansive. Rationalistic civilization has swept over the whole globe because it has not yet met any other rival psychological fact. Reason and individualism has swept over the world everywhere in collective life of man up till now because no other psychological factor has come up and stood against it. Its only rival was perhaps religion. Well, religion could not stand against the onslaught of rationalistic attitude. Revolt of reason that has brought in the individualistic. I don't want to go into the whole history. You see, the revolt of reason came about by the first revolt against established religion, Catholicism, and Martin Luther gave first expression to that individual freedom in interpretation of religious scripture and religious life, freedom of religious life of man, and freedom to interpret scriptures that are given to him. And that automatically, by one step, when Galileo and other people were on the scene, led automatically to the discovery of these astronomical truths, you see. And astronomical truths were not in keeping with the biblical, conceptions of Roman Catholic religion. And therefore, the church or the religious, the traditional religion tried to suppress the search for the truth in the realm of matter, in the physical life. And that combined with Martin Luther's, declaration that man was completely free to deal with his creator and with the scripture that was given to him as he liked. And then second step combined with it was that man must be free also to find out the secret of physical or material nature. That by one step led to questioning of all religion. Martin Luther didn't want to question religion or the authority of the Bible at all. He only wanted to have the freedom to interpret as he liked. But the result was one step forward and they questioned the authority of religion itself. That why should you believe in a religion? Why should there be any scripture at all? That is the revolt of reason, you see. Revolt of reason came after the Reformation, you see, really, and gave the first inkling of the scientific age that man has got so much to search, to see, to find out. Matter is there, so water, light, electricity, heat, magnetism, metals, organic, inorganic substances. And why bother about a religion which somebody said was such and such a thing and revealed and so on? Leave it aside. Let us go and find out what is this around us. Well, this freedom was used, and this was a revolt of reason against established traditional authority of religion. Well, triumphal progress was of physical science, and physical science was found to be very utilitarian, very useful. It was not as if you'll get something when you go to heaven. You see, the difference was that you would go, you be pious, gentle, kind, merciful, devoted, and all kinds of good things and charitable, well, you will be rewarded in heaven. Well, here was science right out here and doing discoveries, bringing scientific discoveries and making heaven available here. So that if you are in a hot country, well, you get cold. If you are in cold country, you get hot. Well, whatever you like, you can do. If you want to fly, you can fly. Well, you can go underwater. If you like, you can go underwater. Well, now this was almost a try to create condition of physical perfection here if possible, you see. Now this was something that science did. Triumphal progress of physical science. This was a great triumphal march of physical science. Religion, politics and society, in all these, man found that there were bonds and limitations and constrictions and rights. Certain people have more rights and others have less rights, and there was what he called injustice, because why should a certain man be more qualified than the other, and so on. Science had nothing of the kind. Religion had something in which he could always complain of some bondage or some special right or injustice. Or in politics, some people claim priority and more power, or in society, more place, and so on. In all this, he found bond and reservation of rights and injustices. And he questions why they have rights. Why should so and so have more right? That led to the revolt of reason in other fields. First revolt was against religious authorities trying to curb or check the progress of mind or reason in the field of physical sciences. But it was not confined to that field afterwards. It said, but in politics, why such and such a thing? In society, why such and such a thing? Why a certain man is called, regarded high and another is regarded low? What is high and what is low? Well, that became, you see, the revolt of reason did not remain confined first to its freedom to find out the truth or secret of physical nature and question the authority of religion to dictate in any other field outside. It also questioned religion. It also questioned the authority of the priest. It also questioned the authority of the scripture to say that word was created in 7,000 or 6,000 years and so on and so on. Well, it questioned all along. And in society and in politics also, it questioned wherever it found something not in consonance with its conception of freedom of man, individual. This is the revolt of reason. And he said that I want to know the facts about the world. That is what the reason wanted to know. And he says that I will use my sense of right and truth about judging everything. I won't take a judgment from anybody for granted. I will take my own responsibility, find out the facts of life for the world, and my own sense of right and judgment about truth, and I will have my own experience of reality. That is the revolt of reason, you see. Now that led to this modern, what you call this individual age of individualism and reason. Now, in what is man going to seek his ultimate foundation, either of his individual life or of his collective life? Will reason be the last foundation of man's, seeking for the reality? Will reason be the foundation on which he will build his individual and collective life? What will be the ultimate foundation, psychological foundation of building his own and also building his collective life? Will reason be the last faculty or psychological power on which man will build his individual and collective life? This is one question. Can he build on religious experience? Can he build it on philosophy? There are alternatives, you see. He is quite free to make a philosophy by abstract reasoning and by metaphysics and to arrive at some conception of the reality and guide his life accordingly. He can mold his individual and collective life based upon a religious conception of life, philosophical conception of life. In fact, religion once did lead. But there also individual experience became determinative. On what was founded the authority of religion? The founder. The founder had experience. So it was really determined on the experience of somebody. Even the religious, belief or religious guidance given to man as individual collective life was not a result of only accepting truths on trust, but somebody claimed an experience. Somebody said, I know, I have this experience and I give you this experience. And people accepted it. So that the background of religion was really individual experience, somebody. And that became determinative. And then the scripture, ritual, the church, and the external social aspect of religion was built up. And conventional religion was first questioned, and then it went further and questioned scripture and the very foundation of religion itself, whether God exists. You see? So the questioning could not stop halfway. Renaissance it was that gave to Europe the free curiosity of the Greek mind. The Greek mind was in the beginning capable of an intellectual curiosity by which it sought to find out the truth of everything that came in contact with the senses and with the mind. The Renaissance gave that curiosity of intellect to Europe. And therefore, everywhere there was search for first principles. Facts were scrutinized and made sure that what we know about them is true as far as we could make it true by scrutiny and observation, by direct observation. And then the contribution of the Romans came, large practical sense of life, order, utility, you see, and practicality, in fact. That was the contribution of the Romans. You see, the Roman Empire and the Roman genius, based on the intellectual curiosity of the Greeks, which was a contribution of Renaissance to Europe, Europe got from Roman Empire and the Roman genius the sense of order, practicality, and utility. And in religion, the revolt of reason said that an individual illumination we cannot trust. If somebody said that I have seen God, well, we can't trust individual experience. We must have something which everybody can experience. And that is, I think, where we can very easily give a challenge to reason, because it is Sri Aurobindo's stand that everybody has to experience the ultimate reality. From Sri Aurobindo's point of view, you will see that religion to him is concrete experience. Otherwise, it's not religion. It is social religion, conventional and meant for going to church, which is quite different thing. But religion in the sense of religious impulse of man to know who he is or what is the world or what is the relation between the reality that is at work in the universe and within himself, then it must be experience which must decide this point. And Sri Aurobindo boldly gives the lead to the whole of mankind if it wants to take that there is a way. Are you prepared to tread the way? You will have the experience. There is no more positive, generalization to this path of religion than the one that is worked out by Sri Aurobindo, because he knew that this is a human problem and humanity will require not an individual authority or an experience or authority of an individual experience, but they will want to have the chance of getting the experience. Just as in science, everybody doesn't know atom fissioning. Nobody knows very well, about half a dozen or dozen persons only know. But you know that it is possible to learn, to grow, to understand, and to come to a stage when you may yourself also try atom fissioning if you want. Well, it's true of religious life. Are you prepared to try? So there is a way. You can reach, and everybody can have the experience. If he doesn't have, it is his own choice. He cannot say that, oh, I want to try. Say, yes, come, you try. You will have concrete experience. Now, this is he is just laying down the first chapter to show that on one side, there is something which everybody can do. Claim of reason and science. Claim of reason and science is anybody can try or experiment and find out whether it is true or not. Same thing, anybody in spiritual life can try and find out whether there is any reality or not. He has to start that there is a reality, as in science also you start that there is something to be found out. You don't know, you say it is matter, but you don't know what is matter up till now. After 200 years of experiment, you do not know what is matter. You are experimenting with something, X. Well, the same way you expect or accept an X in the beginning of spiritual life, and you will come in contact with the working of that X. You will certainly have a concrete experience. Well, that is further up. Now, that will have ultimately take bearing on social reconstruction. The problem will not be merely to create a society based upon reason and upon imagination or upon aesthetics, but problem will be how to create a collective life around a spiritual entity in man. That will be the next step after reason. If you overpass reason, if a number of men go beyond the realm of the limitations of reason, well, he can feel by concrete experience a spiritual reality. Well, if a number of people experience a spiritual reality, they would certainly be capable of creating a society, a collective life in which reason is not the dominating factor, but seeking of the spiritual reality is the dominant factor. It is quite possible. Well, that is far off yet, but we are just making out that individual elimination is not accepted by reason as determinative because they don't want to trust anybody else's experience. So also the individual right in society he doesn't want to accept. He wants to know why you have certain rights. A general principle therefore has to be found. Discoveries of science gave this general path of knowing the truth of matter. Science gave this general truth to everybody. It satisfied the want of the Western mind in the 19th century. There was nature. Experiment was done on all the material which nature offered. You had to use your power of observation, make experiments, come to judgment, derive or find out laws which govern material substance or material energy, whatever you like to call it. And these are discovered by anyone, discoverable by anyone. Anyone can discover these laws for himself and satisfy himself. Well, the European effort to govern life by this means by this scientific attitude and this rationality or rationalism is the culminating point of European civilization. This is the highest point to which European civilization has risen. It's a triumph of the individualistic age, and it is also its end. It's a triumph and it is its end because beyond it, it cannot go. It is not possible for it to go with, given its own limitations, self accepted, it cannot go beyond. Universal laws discovered by individual free thought, and now the individual is all, you see, these universal laws of matter are now discovered by whom? By the individual reason. The laws of matter are the laws discovered by the revolt of individual rational faculty, is it not? The individual revolt. The result of these laws is that individual is a byproduct of the universe. You will see how contradictory it becomes for reason to discover this great, baffling truth. Reason started to find out the truth. When it found out scientifically all through taking nothing for granted, it found out that there are laws which are universal. And as the universal laws operate, the individual is only a byproduct of the universe. Individual is not determinating. Individual is a secondary product of the whole process of the cosmos, of the universe. This was, man is almost a byproduct of it. If you want to govern life by these laws, universal laws, then you must cut down individual freedom. The freedom by which you discovered these laws has to be cut down. Do you want life to be governed by the laws which you have found out? Yes, all right. Then in that case, the freedom of the individual will have to be first cut off because the universal laws don't regard individual as of supreme importance. The laws discovered by reason. The laws which the reason of man has discovered does not believe that individual is something wonderful and sacred. It says, well, it's a product of the process, universal process. So he has, if he wants to apply universal law to individual life, he has to cut down individual freedom. Now he got these laws because Well, he claimed that freedom and exercised it. You see the contradiction? He got these very laws because he revolted and claimed freedom. Now the discovery of the law says, well, you cannot have freedom if you want to execute these laws of universal, nature which you have found out. That's it. Individual freedom must be suppressed. So it drives us to the rigid new ordering of society on economic lines. That is why universal laws now being applied. Then he says the laws governing society are economic laws. Then the collective life says, yes, so collective life, oh, you have no freedom. You see, it is being actually applied in economic field of collective lives. Therefore, we are now in a stage, he says, where a rigid new ordering of society on economic lines, on governmental socialism, in which the individual will have his life mapped out instead of, completely mapped out. That is the prospect we are in now, is it not? We are actually in that position. Having discovered the universal laws, we want to apply it to life, because life can be perfect only by living up to those laws, and those laws require that individual should be treated as a byproduct. Well, so naturally, society is being now mapped out. All the activities of societies are being definitely, decided in advance, and individual will have his life completely mapped out instead of religious and ethical authority, which was before and against which he revolted. There was religion dictating to life before. There was before ethical authority, this is good and this is bad. That we throw out, what is good and what is bad. Now there will be, or there will have to be, the scientific expert. And the scientific expert will have to decide everything. What will he decide? Marriage, education, all the other fields of life, naturally, because, well, in that case, that is what we are in for. To be fixed by scientific state, by a scientific state, or by a state which believes in application of reason to life. Rigid social order, perhaps more rigid than the ancient caste system, which is out of vogue. Well, that is the prospect we are in this individual age of rationalistic and individual age. This culmination may not come, but this is towards which it is certainly going. There are forces that are acting also which may prevent this from reaching its highest culmination. But it looks as if the age of reason might be visibly drawing to an end. First, psychological and psychic knowledge also is opening out to man. You see, man is trying to understand what is hypnotism, what is thought transference, what is telepathy, what is dream phenomena, then premonition and spirit communication, and all kinds of things. You see, that is one realm beyond the material, field. Other field of, well, facts is revealing itself, and that will make the reason feel that matter and physics and the world that is around us, visible world, is not the only possible universe. There is a subtle universe possible to man's experience. It was the opening to this new line which gave rise to the beginning of, gave rise to the psychic research institution all over the world. I recounted that story to you, that it was Sir William Crookes and yes, Sir Lorival Lodge, who were first opposed by the orthodox scientific opinion in England, who first had to revolt against this sort of blindness on the part of people who claimed to be rational. And it was against them that they started the Psychic Research Society, and they have collected number of facts, absolutely indubitable, proved by beyond any doubt as to the veracity, as to the veridical nature of the phenomena which of which they speak. I mean, premonition or thought transference or control of some thought, or hypnotism, or walking on fire, and many things. You see, these things are now in the air and in the world. That opens a new line of facts and experience where reason is baffled in a certain way because reason doesn't know what to do with them. It has refused, but you can't refuse a fact. You can't break your head against a stone. That's all. That is what happened to the scientists when Sir Oliver Lodge and William Crookes went out and started the society. You can't stop facts from happening. If they happen, they happen. You have to know that we don't know the explanation, but they happen. Then that is some sense. Now, the second factor is that the dynamic ideas like Nietzsche's idea of Superman or Harry Bergson's idea of creative evolution, you see, elan vital, vital being at work and so on, will to live, intuitive consciousness in the world of life and thought, new conception of certain aspect of man. Man could be a Superman, or that man could move by an other faculty than reason, intuition. That was what Bergson said. You see, Bergson said that the whole movement of life is guided by the vital being that is at work. And the vital being does not work by reason but by intuition. So he brought in another psychological factor, not reason. You see, just that which baffled reason. So there are two factors that are operative, and the third factor, I think, is that the East is awake also. And in the East, the spiritual tendency is dominant. And perhaps East might therefore exert a very great pressure to bring about a greater element of subjectivity in the cultural life of man. Reason and individualism stress the objective aspect of man and the world. That the world is objective, that we are in a world of matter, you deal with elements and material elements. The one who deals is also a product of this material element. In fact, that is what they are discussing seriously in some of the learned societies. Mind is matter. You see? Well, it doesn't matter, but they say like that. Mind is matter, you see? Well, that's how it proceeds. Now, here, the subjective element has a basis of reality, and that subjectivism or subjectivity has a solid, concrete, element behind it, is one great truth which is lived by the East for many years, because it is founded on great experience of thousands of years. So now he says the East is awake. That is the third factor. Over and above the psychological new discoveries and the insistence on intuition and supermanhood by modern thought in life as applied to life, the awakening of the East brings into dynamic movement the third element of subjectivity, in which they might insist to bring about or insist on bringing about a greater subjective element in life. It will not be in the direction of mechanical economism, perhaps. It might end by insisting on practical spirituality. The East might stand up to this challenge of reason and say, yes, if you are practical, well, here is spirituality which is practical. Are you prepared to practice spirituality? You will experience. If you go and have experiment in the laboratory and you get at the truth of science, well, here is yourself the laboratory. You try your subjective growth and you will have a concrete experience. So that it might end in demanding or in giving to man practical spirituality. That is the third factor. Now, two master ideas this age has given, age of individualism and reason. Democratic conception of individual right, that is one. That is to say, the individual, according to it, is not a member of the human pack. He is not merely like one of the beehive and the anthill. He is a soul. The democratic idea has behind it this spiritual truth, that man is not merely a member of the human pack, that he is not like a bee in the beehive or an ant in the anthill. That man is a soul. He requires freedom for his growth. He requires space, expansion, freedom around him. He requires initiative. He requires, a chance to start on his own without being led to any other direction or compelled to go into any other channel. He has individual truths to fulfill. He is not merely a one to fulfill the truth of collective life. That is what we are being told, that you must live for the collectivity. You must live for the nation or for the group. But the individual has a truth. The spiritual truth behind the claim of democracy or individual freedom is that the freedom of the individual is sacrosanct, that the individual must be free, because in him lies the ultimate roots of human progress. Human progress, well, whatever we have made, is due to the initiative of the individual. It is the individual who has given all the important. In fact, somebody actually did translate, did seriously say that history was nothing else but a number of biographies of great men. And I think it is very true in some sense. That is to say, history is nothing else but biography of great men. Certain biography of great men, if you take, that is history. And there's great truth in it. Because, it is they who have marked, so to say, the epoch or the time of progress of the individual, of the collective life. Because individual has a truth within him to fulfill. Individual has not to merge himself into others or into the collectivity. And if he has to merge, he must merge into something much more than the collectivity, into the supreme or a spiritual entity or a spiritual reality. If he has to merge and identify himself, it must be not with a group or somebody else, but with the supreme reality. That would be his choice to merge if he wants to merge. There should be no compulsion even about that. West has built up such an effective social structure, a very complicated and complex structure, that the individual there gets very little chance of fulfilling himself. He gets very little chance of self-expression and self-development. It is such a waste of rich human material while trying to utilize the riches of matter or of the world. We think the metal is very precious. The stone and coal is very precious. Man is not so precious, you see. When you put him against the economic, the calculation, then it looks that coal is more important than man. When you put it like that, it looks queer, but that is how social structure is moving. The complexity of social life, is trying to that practical, you see. That utilization of riches of matter is corresponding with the waste of rich human material. And we can't think of dissolving this complex social system also. It cannot be dissolved by one man's order. You cannot break it to pieces. And the collective fabric. But we have to find out the means by which the individual can get a chance of his self-fulfillment. That we must find out. We do not want to break the social structure, but you have to change the basis of this collective life if it is possible. And the individual alone will be able to take initiative in that direction. The collectivity will not change till some individual comes on the scene and shows that change is possible. All changes are done like that, brought about like that only. People were talking before Gandhi came on the scene that political questions and social questions cannot be solved except by resorting to politics or to fight or to, revolution and so on. He showed that you can try to apply. If you have a large mass at your back who are willing to follow you, well, you can resort to non-violent means and get your problem solved. There are conditions. It's not unconditional. You must have a large mass at your back, and the mass must be prepared to carry out the program. There are 2 or 3 important conditions. But given those conditions, well, you can solve the problem non-violently. Now, if Gandhi was not there, you would never have known. You see that it is possible. Well, that is exactly how the economy-centric outlook of collective life today obtaining will have to change, and for that, individual must secure his freedom, which is under jeopardy, which is under danger today because of the collectivity trying to Well, it says that now individual is a byproduct and therefore it wants individual to behave as a byproduct. And this is a discovery of reason itself. And now reason is dictating, the restriction of reason. It is self-contradictory, but it is there. It is by revolt that these laws are found out. And this law says that now the reason of man must be curbed. He can't be left free to do what he likes, think what he likes, and act what he likes. He must do what the collectivity tells him, what the laws of universal discovery tell him. Now, in the second chapter, he tried to work out the coming of the subjective age. A greater age of subjectivity than rationality might be coming. That is the proposition he's trying to show. Can we revive the old religions? Because there are many people who say, oh, we have lost the path, so let us go back to what was. Shamdo said that is not possible in human life. You can never go back. Don't try to revive the past, because past has done its service and is actually living in the present. Past is not gone. What was not necessary for the present is left behind. That's true. You cannot bring that back. Bringing that back will be only bringing the dead bones of the past into the present life. That's all. It won't be life. You cannot go back to the past and revive the past. In fact, past is there now present. In the present, we have assimilated what was in the past and we are here in the present. You cannot think of bringing that back as it was. It is not possible. That's one. Revival of the old is impossible. Well, they will again get the same encrustations and create new forms, and it won't work. So what is to be done is to create new form now that will be suitable to the spirit of man today. Not to go back to revive old form, thinking that if you revive the old form, the old spirit also will come back. It will not. The forms have done their work and the spirit is gone. By bringing back, you will only get the old bottles in which you will not be able to put the new wine. You see? Well, that's what is required is creation of new form. In fact, in some respects, a dissolvent and destructive criticism also might be very useful. A critical attitude towards anything else than reason trying to come and dominate man's life, individual life or collective life, would be good because he must, warn himself against possible mistakes and dangers. So it is good if somebody says, I don't believe in a God, and starts like that, you see. Only he has to then to believe in the omnipotent state. There is no other alternative left. You see, he will have then to say, yes, what do you want to believe in? You will have to submit to the dictation of collective life. That's what your reason has led you to. You can't refuse that now. You are in for real trouble. So criticism is quite good. Europe brought this to the East, this critical faculty and the aspect of observing everything critically and not accepting anything on authority. It brought rationalistic attitude, utilitarianism, and individualism. These three factors were brought to the by the West. Now, individualistic age today wants to discover the truth of self and the truth of the world. In Europe, this tendency took the scientific turn, as you know. Domination of the individual and reason. The individualistic age took this turn that individual wanted to find out the truth of himself and truth of the world. He claimed the right. You see, when he refused religious authority, when you refused the scripture, what he wanted was that I myself will find out if there is anything to be known. He claimed the right. You see, when he refused religious authority, when you refused the scripture, what he wanted was that I myself will find out if there is anything to be known. You see, individual claimed the freedom of coming to his own decisions on the basis of his own experience. In the West, this tendency took the scientific turn. It stressed matter and studied its laws, etc., and came to science. Only, unfortunately, it ignored man. He did try to find out about matter. It said, well, let's study matter. And as a result of matter, they found out that mind is only matter. And there is no reason to believe that there is a soul in man because, well, everything happens by material energy which you take from your food, and the energy which is derived from food gives you all the energy for vital life, or mental life, or intellectual life, or emotional life, or spiritual life, for all the life, all that you derive is only nothing else but transmutation, transformation, or you see, complete change of matter only. So it ignored man as a mental, man as a vital being. Man as a body is all right, subject to matter. But man is also a mental being. Man is also a vital being. And this scientific attitude neglected that aspect of man as a mental being and as a vital being. And it forgot that physical world and its knowledge is not the whole of knowledge. Physical world is there and is real. Its knowledge is true as far as it goes, but then it is not the whole of knowledge. Man's psychology is strongly influenced by the physical surrounding, by environment. That is true. They will say that what man is always ruled by his surrounding. You say man is spirit and all that. Where when he's in cold region, he should go, who puts himself into a condition in which he wouldn't suffer cold, and if he's surrounded by certain elements of nature, he behaves in a particular way. He says that is true. That he is strongly influenced by physical being and surroundings, but he is not wholly determined by them. He is not determined by them. Then he wouldn't go to the North Pole and establish laboratories there. North Pole doesn't want him, but he says, I want to go. And then he says, all right, I'll take all heating apparatus and raise a building there. You see? And then double walled buildings in which the outer building is only attacked by ice and the inner life is as you are in New York or any other city. Whole thing is taken there. So it's not determined by nature, by environment. Environment is being dictated. Well, there's two seas were apart. Well, man says, I'll join the seas. And then you have Panama Canal, and there you got the Suez Canal. Is it not? Environment was not able to dictate to man. Well, for some time, man went on saying, oh, you have to get down at Suez on this side and walk about so many miles, 100 miles, and reach the other sea, and then go to the Red Sea, and from there to the Mediterranean, and so on. Well, man said, now let us try and let us break this thing. Well, the seas were joined. So you can bore through mountains. So environment is not necessarily, this was one of the points which Bertrand Russell tried to make out in his sixth broadcast in London, man versus nature. There is no question of versus, it's a question of man's environment dictating to him, and molding his psychology. Well, man, when he got his scientific knowledge and his individual freedom gave him this understanding of matter, well, he is able to govern his surroundings, to mold his surroundings as he likes, so that it influences him but doesn't determine everything about man. Well, economic state and social institutions are governed by his psychological demand, in fact. People say that man is governed by economy, but sometimes economy is governed by psychology. People didn't understand it. You see, my friends were students of economics and taken their degree in the university, and they said, oh, man is a creature of economic life. You see, he's always governed by prices that go, you see, level of price. According to that, I said, you are not quite right. He may be normally doing like that, but let something else come in and he will immediately kick out economics. Oh, he said, nobody can do it. I said, yes, you can do it. Then when there was boycott of British goods in India, I showed him, now see what is happening. The British goods was 16 times cheaper than Indian goods, and Indians didn't buy. So that's that. Once they make up their mind, no, we shall not take this thing, finish. There is an end of the matter. It may be free. It says, I don't want. You understand how psychology can. Normally you say no, but normally man will buy the cheapest thing and the best thing at the cheapest price. That's all right. Nobody objects to that. But it is not that whole of his life is governed by economic factors only. He can say, you go to England and you will be surprised to know cheap American cars the Englishmen won't buy. They are cheaper. They won't buy. They always think, oh, that's just English car. So you see, it's the psychology can also influence economic life and social. That's it. So the point is that it's not always that the law is it. You are not, don't generalize. You can say, yes, man tries to, well, feels that he's subject to economic conditions around him, but it's not economic that throughout can rule him if he decides, or some factors in his psychology awakens him to the need, then well, he can flout all economic laws and still survive. Yes, and also you have to remember when you, how will he then know himself? He has only tried in European culture, the effort of this individual freedom of reason was used to know nature, to evolve this science and its progress. Now, by what method is man going to know himself? What he needs as an individual, or what is his fulfillment? It won't be the instrument for this, will not be his critical reason, will not be only analytical faculty. Man can know himself not merely by being self critical, but by being more self conscious. By growth of consciousness, not by growth of self criticism. And reason can give him only self criticism. Reason is like a, gardener or somebody who puts a seed into the ground and before it has chance to come out wants to see what has happened. Well, he again upsets the whole soil and the result is nothing grows. This is exactly what is happening to human reason today in the realm of spiritual life. They say, but you concentrate. You just concentrate. After 2 or 3 days of concentration, you won't find out what has happened. It's like a fellow who is putting the seed into the ground and he's put water and then after 2 or 3 days he digs it up. Well, it's all right. Nothing happens. He says, nothing can happen. Look, nothing has happened. Of course not. It's quite right. This critical faculty of man puts him in such a condition that he wants to begin to doubt everything and question and find out before the process is over, before the time is allowed, and it doesn't allow. This critical faculty is good in its own place, but well, self-conscious growth is more important. The idea of preserving rationality is not a great powerful idea, because when it is put against intuitive knowledge, it has always proved less powerful. When reason is pitched against intuition, it has been always found that intuition was right and the reason was not right. This is a discovery for man to make if he wants to make. But see, if he uses the intuitive faculty, he will always find that the reason and its doubt were not right, and intuition and its assertion were right. This is a thing to be tried. Materialism of the 19th century gave rise or gave place to vitalism in matter of European, metaphysics. From matter, the movement was towards life. The eye now of Europe is fixed on life. The European consciousness is fixed on life. This is true, perfectly true and good, because it makes life, understood properly, makes life safe, secure, rich, strong, powerful, organized. In every way, it's a great advantage. But it is fixed on life and it imposes a limitation ultimately. There is a will to live and will to power. That's true. The life soul of the whole universe seems awake and active in Europe. And this has tended to be subjective. This is good because in one sense, it is subjectivity. Man is not only matter, but life. You see? It's a subjective element which was dominating till at least the First World War. Now we have to see what emerges out of the two world wars. In art and music, in literature, there is a profound revolution in the direction of an increased subjectivity. In the movement of art or music and literature, you find a greater element of subjectivity coming in. This, of course, is you have to study these things. We have got a lot of material. We are dealing with poetry now, and I have tried to show that in poetry, at least that is what is taking place. In arts, in literature, in story, in novels, you find a greater subjectivity. It is not deep subjective movement. It is not even life in its profundity, because what is portrayed very often is the melody and malaise of life, as they say in French. Malaise, a sort of, not melody, but a restlessness of life, if you like to call it, you see. Not life itself, not life, its health and its power, but its distractions and melody of life and the trouble and the disturbance of life rather than life itself. But subjectivity, it is subjective element that is coming in. The war is symptomatic of this subjective age in the sense that the war meant the seizing of the material advance made by man to satisfy his will to be. Man tried to seize this material advance by its vital ego and tried to satisfy his will to live and will to power. These two impulses that were given to him in his subjective collective life, well, he tried to take hold of scientific progress and satisfy this will to live, will to power. Germans succeeded more, but everybody was organizing his life accordingly. I mean, Germans are not necessarily the one who can be pointed out as the worst culprits. I mean, it's whole situation. The very dominance of reason in individualism is the cause, you see. And in one country, perhaps it was organized more in one direction, in another it was organized more in another direction. As yet, nothing fixed or solid has been achieved in this line of subjectivity, but tendencies are there. That point, that new ideas about education, for instance, the acceptance of the fundamental freedom of the child, that shows the increasing subjective element is applied to life. Before that, child was regarded as property of the parents, and it was like a box, empty box in which you have to put material or information and organize it there and put packets of knowledge inside and fill it up and say it is perfect. That was the conception. In fact, child was not thought as if it had any freedom to decide anything. The teacher and the parent and elders had to say what he will become, whether a doctor or an engineer or a teacher or a priest or, well, parents decided. 40 years, 50 years back, now all that is changed. The freedom of the child is accepted, even in the realm of education. That is to say, child is free, and it is regarded as a soul, different, distinct entity, and you should not meddle into the freedom of the child too much. Well, that is the recognition of the subjective element coming into application in life. That is one. Child's own intellectual and moral capacities, being recognized in this more subjective attitude. Montessori method is a particular application of this attitude to life, you see, to the life of the child. And the collective consciousness of man as a nation. Also, I think, dealing with the criminals, you see, dealing with the people who commit crimes. There also the attitude before was vindictive. Only the idea was how to punish somebody who was regarded as antisocial. Now the idea is that he might be somebody who has committed a mistake, or is a victim of circumstance, or victim of social injustice, and he should be, well, redeemed. He should be improved. He is a human unit and capable of being improved. And he must be put back into society as a as a useful unit. Now, this attitude toward criminals also is indicative of this outlook, new outlook of man as a subjective being, you see. Now, in this chapter that follows, he is pointing out the importance of the individual in the scheme of collective life. I think we'll take it up tomorrow, perhaps. This is perhaps late. We can take a fourth chapter tomorrow. This is practically first three chapters. Yes, I think the coming of the subjective age. Coming of the subjective age, I think. But you can say first chapter of human cycle. I don't exactly remember because I have not quoted the name.
I'm fixed on life and will to live and power.
Yes. That is its central drive now. Yes, that is its central drive. And it has created some complications and difficulties which it is trying to solve.
Art, music, and so forth.
Yes.
There's greater element of subjectivity entering in.
Coming in slowly, yes. The subjectivity is also, life is subjectivity, remember that. When he speaks of life, he also speaks of the subjectivity. And the subjective element entering into these fields of cultural activity shows that yes, the subjectivity is entering into the field of creation also.
And become good citizens. Do you feel that this is possible? Do you feel that all criminals can be rehabilitated and put back into society as useful citizens?
Well, it can if the social structure changes and the attitude of society and administration both changes. It is conceivable that very small percentage might be incorrigible. But even for this incorrigible, the treatment could be humane. Treatment is not punishment, I mean. The remedy is not punishment. Remedy is perhaps keeping them off from the field where they might be dangerous, at the most, I mean. The recalcitrant element is small in number, very small percentage of criminals would be irrevocably, given up to the tendency. They do require, if study is made, that they require either something is lacking in their, life, which has encouraged them to take up this criminal tendency. But if they find that lack satisfied, probably the change might come. And more important is to prevent the crime from being, enacted. How to prevent the crime is more important than punish the man after he's becoming criminal. Social constitutional or social structure must be such that the criminal tendency would be prevented from coming into being. That is the conception of a good society. The behavior of the collectivity must be such, and the values which it sets up in collective life should be such as are being carried out by large number of persons, in which case the people who want to break that, the values of life will be small. But if the social structure is such in which each one is for himself and is trying to get the maximum advantage of an economic situation, because today society means economics. It is a perfect economic organization. That is the whole thing, centered on life. And life means economics. So the perfect economics organization in which a most efficient individual, economically efficient individual, and a powerful, prosperous society. That is the conception. Now, given that, what values will be in that society? Where will be honesty in that society? If the man, by doing anything, can evade the law, he will not pay the tax, isn't it? Because it's economy. That is a central thing. You created a value in which he doesn't say, I'm a citizen, I must pay. Who is going to pay? The state must run. No, he says, if I can avoid, I will not pay. Because now the power governing, you want individual is the most efficient individual, economic individual you want to produce. Economically efficient individual in a perfectly organized economic state or economic collectivity. That is the conception of collective life. Well, if any values are there, they're good enough for decoration. If you say art, all right, you say good art. Once in a month, we will see what is art. Once in the year, there will be some exhibition, we will go and buy a piece of art. Life has not become artistic. Art has not penetrated into life. See, that is the difficulty. I don't say that it is absent. I don't say to the extent that it could govern life, it is not governing. It is quite possible to organize. If you go to Japan, you might be surprised to know to what extent life can be, turned around art to the poorest man. The most surprising. Well, that is what is possible. I don't say everything there should be everywhere, it should be like that. But the values which now obtain, well, very little chance for anything else except economic prosperity. And economic prosperity is the ruling force. And so the individual is only valued to the extent of his economic, you know, place in this social structure. Perfect economic individual in a prosperous collectivity. You must bring other values into life. Then, if people live up to those, criminal tendency will decrease. Criminal acts are also sometimes a result of social conditions. You see, that is what people. That's how socialism came, and that is how this new attitude towards criminal also developed. That people saw actually that the man was ready to work, he did not get work, so he committed theft. The society was, I know in India there are hundreds of persons who cannot get work even when they want and hard. They go about seeking work, they don't get work. The fortunate thing, and that is what Margaret found out when she was there, says, I'm surprised at the way they put up with the difficulty. The same society, they would have committed looting, arson, murder, or anything anywhere else. They don't, because those values are there still in their psychology, that this thing is bad, we shouldn't do this is not good. When they are driven to it, they do it. But I mean, the pressure is there on them that this is good and this is bad. This should not be done. And that's why poverty doesn't drive them to crime to the extent that they would in any other condition where economy alone was the ruling value of life, you see. I have always admired those people and looked upon them with great respect, to tell you my frank admission. With wonder, I was surprised at their capacity to actually live up to those high values in that grinding poverty. That was a Chester Bowles even admitted in Delhi when he was leaving his post as the ambassador of India. He gave a glowing tribute to this poor class in India. He had been there on foot and in the morning going out to works where people were laboring, you see, and labor quarters where they live 25, 30 miles from Delhi. And when they used to come daily for work, he said, I was surprised to know the nonchalance and the quiet of mind and the happiness with which they were living in that grinding poverty. Wonderstruck, he says. They get up in the morning with song, he says. And they don't know what they will get during daytime. And the way in which they behave with each other, so what a people. He says. They don't steal from each other, they want to sacrifice for each other, give somebody else, and they maintain very, very fine values in their own life. Honesty, morality, values of life, value of word, and so on. He played a very fine tribute, and I think he was right in that this does not come from now. It is a heritage for thousands of years of people having built up inner values of life which have percolated to the masses. And the masses have got yet something of that sticking to them. It's due to that they are able to keep up the spirit, you see, in the midst of this poverty. From the work, singing. After the day's work, the one thing they get is singing home. 40, 30, 50 of girls, ladies or men will go on singing, 10 of 10 here, 15 there, they will be singing there and they will be answering from here. And they will walk their home 10 miles. Most surprising. I have heard it myself. I know. Work is the time for enjoyment. They never think, oh, what to do. Not out. Now that comes because of that. Life is like that. We must take it lightly and make ourselves happy under the circumstances and live as best we can. They try that. Now, once you put economics in the center, there will be trouble. You see, I don't say that that is ideal condition. I don't say that it is wonderful condition. No, they should have now a chance to work wherever they want to work, and for work enough must be given to them to live, to clothe, and to house. This is the responsibility of society and government. A society that cannot give work to its people who want work is not a good society. It is condemned in one sense, you see. If people who are ready to work and do not find work, and for the work do not find sufficient to feed themselves, to clothe themselves, and to house themselves, well, it is not a good society. It is not a society which can be said to be normal. Normal society's constitution is such that anybody who wants work must get work. And for the work, he must get enough to eat, to dress, and to have a house. This is the responsibility both of government and society, which are part of each other. Look at it from not only individual point of view, but collective point of view. What this action means in the collectivity. Evasion of tax, for instance. Well, you must know that if 80 out of 100 evaded tax, there will be bankruptcy at the government level. Isn't it?
The situation to go back to the prison. I've heard Russia, they've done very well for the prisoners. Yes. They don't have very many.
Yes, Russia has, in some direction, they have done very good work, pioneering work.
The number of criminals in the United States is much larger than those that get caught. It's been shown by many studies that the people who get caught are usually the poorest, or they do a petty crime and bungle that. It's a big crime if they aren't caught. Then more than little crimes. And things like theft and robberies are usually caught, but the what they call white collar crime is very rarely caught. And
yes,
rate of crime,
you know the reason
that are caught is very low.
I can give you the reason. Because you have put economics in the center of collective life, crime has become a business.
Oh, it's been a big business.
You don't know that, perhaps.
Oh, I know it.
Yes, I know only 4 months, but I know. Crime is a business here. Because it pays. You see, he doesn't look at the psychological aspect of it at all. That this is not good, he says it pays. And anything is pays, and if you are not caught, it is honest and all right.
Criminals are very difficult to catch.
Yes.
They catch them and also have to catch them on practice rating, but there aren't people that carry a gun and look like the traditional criminal in the comic book. They travel in the best of
yes, exactly. Yes.
the best of cars, and they're cultured, and they're big time criminals.
Yeah, they are not one. It's a whole group. You see, it's a what you call it, huh? Yes, it's a ring.
Tendencies were inherited, and that criminal tendencies were inherited.
Not criminal. It was inferior. The something of the hereditary incapacities, not criminality necessarily. Certain hereditary incapacity which go through the nervous system and transfer themselves to the future generation. Heredity.
Defects in the nervous system.
Yes, inherited. It is not necessarily criminal only. Certain incapacities will be transferred to the future generations. Well, those people who have those incapacities should be prevented from procreation. That was the idea. Including some criminals, I will admit. But criminals were not the only people thought of. We had to pass a law to encourage people to have children, so that the more children, the more was the government rebate given to you. If you are in government service, if you had one child, you got 100 or 200 francs. If you got 3 children, you got 500 francs. If you got 10 children, you got 2,000 francs.
Why was that?
Because the population was decreasing. So they had to encourage.
That's true. Read an article about it, but what is your feeling about the system? Do you think it's a
Well, the basic principle is all right. Freedom of the child. It's on that it is based. That the child is free and it must be allowed to learn. The teacher must meddle the least in the process of growth of the child. I think that is a safe and correct principle. How it is applied is another matter. In Montessori, there are appliances and all kinds of things which they prepare, but a teacher can prepare his own material. It's not necessary to take material which is prepared by somebody saying this is Montessori material. Montessori is a method based on these two principles of freedom of the child and non-interference. Spontaneous activity to be allowed, sense and sensation to be used as a first lesson, organization of sensation, and then use of the sensation by the organized mind, then capacity to concentrate on certain things. Now these are things which Montessori says, and I think they're quite right. She wants to use sensation as the first method of training, not thoughts and ideas, you see. And that is correct, because child is growing physical organism and it learns the world through senses. So she says that you must bring the child up into developing his power of sensation, power of discrimination, power of perception, then capacity to observe, to concentrate, and to remain in a good company of 10 or 15 other children, trying to put curb to itself, because collective life requires certain restrictions. So the child must be put into a condition in which he can behave, learn to behave in a group life. Well, I think they are quite good, genuine principles of education. Only we go further and we say the child is a soul. And the business of education is to promote the possibility of the child coming to realize its own soul by developing natural faculties of mind, emotional being, vital being, and physical being. All the equipment of the soul must be developed so that the soul may be able to use it. But the entity that uses the natural faculties is the human soul, and the human soul is fundamentally divine.
The change, psychological change, and do you feel this impact of rationalism when you came to this continent?
No, I know this very well even without coming. I know it without coming. It's not necessary to come here to know it.
No, but I mean, each country that you come into, do you feel a different, you feel a different impact?
No, that you see, the society is not like that. What you have is a general atmosphere which works all over, not only in America. It works everywhere. And then in a big group, like a big nation like India or America or England, there are always groups, and the psychology of the groups is not the same as the psychology of the whole. The group can have its own psychology, so that you can meet any number of persons which differ from, atheism to right up to people who are ready to start spiritual life. You can never know. It's not made up of, common elements which are equally current among all people. No, that is not the point. Point is the domination that is given to the certain psychological factors by historical, economic, and evolutionary causes.
Yeah.
It is that which has brought about now a certain condition at the top. So that in a majority of cases, 60 people, 70 people, 80 people out of 100 are being governed by that atmosphere. That is the point. And they think that they are right in doing what they do, because the current values are such that what is right is given to them. This is right. To the extent that even crime can become something which is innocuous, in the sense that if you are not caught, you are not criminal. You are a criminal if you are really, turned towards the lower side of your life. That is not admitted. Criminal, if you are a criminal, it's only if you are caught, you are a criminal. You see? That is just the wrong thing that happens.
Found in the lazy fair group that boys were throwing the spitballs and there was no organization and the boys said they didn't like it as well. They didn't have any writing into something that was fun.
For the common man, the middle ground is all right, for the common lot. But if you have teachers who have the atmosphere of real teachers, and if they can create an atmosphere for healthy growth of the children, boys, you can give complete freedom, and yet you will find that they do just what they will learn to do what is good and right. They might commit mistake, but they will learn to do ultimately in that atmosphere. By curbing freedom, it doesn't work always.